This is Keith Jordan. I'm with the Hudson Valley Guild of Mental Health Professionals. Today is July 8th, 2020, and I'm interviewing Linda Curtis, who is also a member of the Hudson Valley Guild of Mental Health Professionals. So Linda, how are you today?
I'm doing well. It's a beautiful day now. Stopped raining finally.
Could you say something about what you do professionally?
I'm a social worker. I've been one for 30 years now. And I kind of fell into doing case management early on, and I never left it. And I do geriatric care management now, which is working with elders and their families to try to keep them at home and independent as long as possible. Or if they need placement, then I work to make that go as well as possible, along with Medicaid applications and all that sort of fun stuff.
So how much of what you do is done through an agency and how much of it is your own private practice?
100% my own private practice. I used to work with agencies like most of us started off at, but for the past 10, 15 years now, I've been totally on my own.
So what got you interested in doing this work, the geriatric work?
A lot of people have asked me that, and the only thing I can come up with is that I grew up in a somewhat unusual household, literally. I grew up in a 4-family apartment building down in Hastings on Hudson in Westchester. My grandfather had a tailor shop, and he owned the building, and he had the tailor shop in the front storefront. And that's just where the family ended up staying multi-generationally. So I grew up there with grandmothers and great aunts and great uncles and cousins. The elders were always a part of my life, and I couldn't imagine them not being. So I think, and then the other thing too is my youngest brother was profoundly developmentally disabled. And it was back in the days when the pediatricians told parents, put him away. Pediatrician told my mother that. And so we went and we looked at Letchworth Village, and this was back in the 60s. It was horrible. This is pre Willowbrook consent decree. So I think that had to do with it too. I've always felt like I've had to advocate for people with disabilities and the elders.
So you see part of what you're doing now is advocacy work.
Oh, very much so. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It seems to be part of everything that I do.
So how do you combine therapy or counseling with advocacy?
It's very much part of it when you're dealing with families that could be in crisis at any minute or in crisis when they call you. And that's usually when I get calls, is from families when, the mom or dad has ended up in the hospital and they said, well, she can't go home, she needs help. That's usually when I get a call. So it's a lot of crisis counseling, very short term. I don't do, long range psychotherapy. I will refer out to other therapists for that when that's needed. But there's a lot of supportive counseling that has to be done with families that I work with. It's not easy being a caretaker. So caretaking, providing supports for the caretakers are a big part of what I do.
So can you say something about your education and training that has helped you to do the work that you're doing?
It's funny, when I went to college, I was going to be a marine biologist. That went out the window when I discovered sociology, and I fell in love with sociology early on. And by the time I was getting out of college with my bachelor's, I had a particular professor. I was thinking at that point of doing counseling, I think it was a particular degree you could get for gerontological counseling. I don't remember what it was. And I had a professor say, no, don't do that. Get an MSW. And I did, pretty much based on that conversation. And I'm glad I did, because I am a social worker through and through.
So who usually seeks out your services? The families, agencies that work with the families, or the elderly? Where do you get your referrals, and how do people learn of your services?
All of the above. I get referrals from so many different sources. I try to keep track. It's interesting when I look back. Some are the biggest, I'd say, referral sources is word of mouth through families and other professionals that have had experience with my work. Doctors' offices, elder care attorneys. I've even had some referrals to the Guild. Other professionals asking for help, sometimes with their own families.
What would you say sets you apart from other therapists? I mean, one thing that sets you apart, obviously, is you work with a very specific population. Is there anything else that you'd like to say about how you do your work that might be different than somebody else?
I think because I don't give up with my families, I stick it out. For example, right now I'm helping a family that has a sister that has early onset dementia. She's only 65 and is already experiencing the last stages of the disease. And she has a lot of behavioral issues, to the point that no facility that she's been in or near wants anything to do with her. And I find myself constantly with this case being like the voice in the wilderness. I felt, and I still do feel, like this one case in particular is an example of a total systemic failure that has occurred in our healthcare system.
So you work not only with individuals and families, but with the systems themselves, trying to improve them.
Oh yeah, that really comes with the job. Advocating for your patients or your clients involves trying to get institutional change whenever you possibly can. It's a toughie, especially when you're dealing with things like Medicaid, Medicare, the big really institutions that we have in this country and in this state. Yeah.
So how would someone contact you to make use of your services?
Call me or email me. Pretty simple.
All right. And do you want to share that information?
Sure. My phone number, and you can call me anytime, and I always get back to people within 24 hours, is 914-420-2438. And my, I have a website too. So my website is www.curtiscaremanagement.com, just like it sounds. And my name is Curtis. My email is like the website. It's Linda@curtiscaremanagement.com.
Well, Linda, it sounds like you really do have some very unique services you can offer to people, and especially to elderly people who certainly need services. They're an underserved population for sure. And so I think that this area is very fortunate to have you as a resource. And thank you very much for doing this interview with me.
Thank you, Keith. So how do you think that went?